Very good afternoon if you're from the UK, and a good late morning if you're in the United States. Thanks for clicking on to this special Hurricane Francis update. It is Wednesday, the 11th of September, and this is the latest high-res imagery showing Hurricane Francine to the southwest of the central coast of Louisiana, expected to make a landfall in a few hours' time. And you can see here this imagery shows the sun coming up this morning across the Gulf of Mexico and southern United States. Looking at the latest up-close IR imagery showing Francine, you can see that we do have a bowl of fairly deep convection here around the centre of circulation. There is no clear eye, and you also notice that there is an elliptical look to the structure of Francine. There's a lot of convection getting thrown off to the northeast. The reason for that is we've got a mid and upper level trough over Texas that is increasing the mid and upper level wind shear out of the west and southwest direction. This has been a story really for the past several days. Initially, it was drier. The circulation was actually National Hurricane Center forecasters, also the aircraft reconnaissance over the last 36 hours has been working hard to try and pinpoint a centre of circulation. We did see this feature develop. There was one piece came out off the Yucatan, another piece that was already residing over the northwestern Gulf, and it was as these two systems, features, troughs combined, it was kind of then trying to depict where the new centre had formed, and obviously that then creates an adjustment with forecast models and even a slight adjustment with track as well. But it looks as if there is very good agreement that this system will make a landfall somewhere along the central coast of Louisiana as we progress through the course of this afternoon here. But generally speaking, we do have an increasingly sheared environment. Dry air will also probably come into play as the system makes an approach at landfall. And then we will see the system moving essentially up the Mississippi River over the next 24 to 48 hours or so. Looking at the latest information then from the National Hurricane Center, Francine is currently located just to the south of Lake Charles, Louisiana. Here it looks as if we've got a few hours before landfall. Maximum sustained winds currently at 80 knots or 90 miles per hour. Minimum pressure is down now to 976 millibars. Located at 28 degrees north and 92.7 west. Movement northeast at 11 knots or 13 miles per hour. Looking also further out in the Atlantic, we've got Tropical Depression 7 has now been classified by NHC. This system has winds of around 35 miles per hour, minimum central pressure 1,007 millibars, and it's located way out over the far eastern Atlantic, perhaps a couple of hundred miles to the west of Cape Verde. Then we've got Depression 2, 30% chance of formation over the next 48 hours, and we've got a 10% chance with Depression 3 developing over the next 48 hours or so. But looking specifically at Francine, like I say, a 90 mile per hour hurricane, it looks as if it is going to maintain this strength, perhaps ever so slightly weakening as it makes a landfall in the central coast of Louisiana. It will make landfall as a hurricane, and it will be problematic. We're going to have maybe 2 to 5, possibly slightly more in terms of storm surge as the system comes ashore here. We've got hurricane warnings right along the Louisiana coast. We've also got storm surge warnings also. Flooding is going to be probably the biggest concern with all this as it comes ashore, and the reason for that is over the last 10 days or so, stalled out frontal system has been stuck in place over the northern Gulf, southern United States through the past week or so, and we've essentially seen 5 to 10, locally 12 inches of rain. So we've had a foot of rain falling in this general area. There's low lying, it's swampy, and having a further 5 to 10 inches of rain falling on top of what has already fallen will create a flooding problem. Now, obviously, what's going to happen is this system is going to dump rain, then it goes into the river systems. The water then tries to run down towards the Gulf of Mexico, but when we've got the wave action and the storm surge coming in off the Gulf, we've got a situation here where you've got runoff, floodwaters trying to go south, the storm surge trying to go north, and therefore we could have a potentially very dangerous situation developing. While this system is only only a 90-mile-per-hour hurricane, it's the storm surge threat and the flood threat, I think, that is greatest risk for Louisiana over the next, 5 to 10 hours or so. Then the system will eventually move inland, become a tropical depression, or tropical storm, sorry. It will run, like I say, up the Mississippi River here, and it's going to dump a lot of rain for further inland areas. So this is the QPF model for the next couple of days, 48-hour rainfall, and you can see here some of these kind of orangey yellow colors representing as much as anywhere from 5 to as much as 10, possibly locally upwards of 15 inches of rain falling over the next 48 hours. If we skip on to the 5 to 7 day rainfall, and you can see here that the rainfall swath goes all the way up into the upper Mississippi River here, into the Ohio Valley also here. But you notice here that it stays relatively dry all the way across the Great Lakes region here. And what's going to happen is this system, I think, is going to fizzle out over the Tennessee Valley in a few days' time here. The system never really reaches all the way up into northern Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, for example. It looks as if it's going to rain itself out before it even gets there. Looking at the HAFS-B model, looking at the inner structure of Francine, you can see that as it plays through the loop here, we've not got this kind of donut-shaped, thick wall of intense, strong winds around the center of circulation. Notice here the pressure, according to the HAFS-B, actually drops to 969 millibars. Let's kind of zoom in just a little bit here to show you a little bit clearer what this model is indicating here. But this is essentially the mean sea level pressure in millibars and the 10 meter wind speeds here. Now what is going to happen is this system is going to then continue to creep along to the coast. Notice here the pressure has already risen to 970 millibars before landfall, and the reason for that, and we'll look at this in just a second, is drier and increased wind shear. We've got a jet stream separating cooler and drier to the north, hot, humid air out over the Gulf of Mexico here. So it's coming up against increased hostility. Notice again the pressure kind of bounces around here. It goes from 969, 970 back to 969 millibars here. Notice here the core of strongest winds then is on the southern flank. It's probably engaging with particularly strong winds in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. So this is really doing a work on the inner structure of the circulation itself. Then as it moves onshore along the central Louisiana coast here, it looks as if the structure is becoming quite significantly decayed due to the hostile environment. Then as it moves onshore, inland by perhaps 50 miles or so, the pressure rises to around 981 millibars, and then it will continue to lift north. So let's have a look and see other factors to take into consideration. So this is the 700 millibar geopotential heights, cyclonic vorticity, and what we've essentially got here is an upper trough over Texas. We've also got this ridge of high pressure over the southeastern Gulf, over Cuba. Essentially what this system has been doing is it's been lifting north, engaging with perhaps some land interaction, but also dragging in some drier off Mexico. That had been capping the intensification process of Francine over the last few days, and it was kind of slow to become a hurricane. But as I expected, once the system kind of manages to get away a little bit from both Texas and Mexico, it enters a slightly calmer environment in terms of shear, less in the way of dry air, and working with that 30 Celsius waters deep below the system itself allowed the structure to become just that little bit more concentrated with deeper convection around the center. We're seeing these kind of abandon thunderstorms here trying to wrap around the center itself, but you always know that it's in an environment that is not perfect when the eye is struggling to pop. And you can see the concentric nature of the system as it moves into Louisiana, but as it does so, it engages with some fairly strong upper level winds. Looking at the moisture levels within the atmosphere here, let's clip back, and you can see here that the system was engaging with some fairly strong dry air intrusion. It doesn't actually show it here quite so much on this map, on this chart here, but you can see all the dry air. We've got some fresh, clean air over the 24-hour period before the system made landfall. We had temperatures dropping into the 50s. Now, parts of Lafayette, Louisiana, for example, has went through the past 4 months without dropping below 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 21 Celsius. So it's been an exceptionally long run of temperatures never getting below 21 C or 70 degrees Fahrenheit in Lafayette. Over the 24 hours prior to now, we've seen the system, that cold front actually dipping further south and allowing some of that fresher, cleaner air, dew points in the 50s, temperatures, I think, dropping into the 50s perhaps as well. And this is the cleanest air that folks here in Louisiana have experienced in months. But what's happened is the system has entered a more humid, moist environment, along with a relatively low shear, and has allowed the system to become a Category 1 hurricane. And then, as you can see here, as it begins to make an approach, it's already starting to entrain some of this dry air out of Texas. The system continues to deepen, even though it's starting to encounter wind shear and dry air. And then it's really, once it makes that approach onto the land, we see the conditions become, there's quite often a slight delay in the system encountering both dry air or wind shear. It takes a little bit of time for the actual inner structure to become affected by that. And we've also got some lopsided aspect of this as well. If we look back at the IR imagery here, the actual system itself, these tropical systems like to be vertically stacked from low to mid to upper levels here. Nice inflow at the surface, divergence aloft here. But what happens is once you start to increase shear being obviously a change in wind speed and direction with height, what happens is it will start to tilt the structure of the system. And that means that the inflow at the surface then cannot rise vertically up through the column in a good way, and therefore we start to see the weakening process begin of these systems, and that is exactly what's happening. We've capped off this kind of strength at around 90 knots or 80 knots, 90 mile per hour, pressure at 976 millibars. We'll probably hold that for the next hour or two, and then we may start to see the pressure going back into the 980s and millibars just as the system makes a landfall here. Whether it holds 90 mile per hour winds at landfall or not remains to be seen. It may drop to around 80 or 85 miles per hour as it makes a landfall on the central Louisiana coast. So we're going to keep an eye on this going forward here. But certainly Francine is going to make a landfall. Flood threat is probably the biggest issue with all this, especially given the fact that we've had 10 to 12 inches of rain fallen in this region over the last week to 10 days. This is the top 5 wettest start of September on record for the central Gulf Coast region as well. So that's another thing worth considering. But Francine will make landfall this afternoon. I will have another update, but it will probably be in the next couple of days. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you have, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. More tropical outlooks to come. And also I will be back shortly with the European outlook, looking at the Arctic outbreak into the west of Europe, heat wave across the east, major rainfall expected across southeastern Europe, including the Balkan region. All that to discuss in the coming European outlook, so stay tuned for that. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Bye for now.